We're back live, Trustmark Studios, my friends. Trustmark, the bank that fits you to a T, as in Trustmark, people you trust, advice that works. Member FDIC and equal housing lender, and on with me is the one and only Dan Stein, who's president of FAIR, Federation for American Immigration Reform. Dan, good morning, sir. It's good to have you, as always, from Washington, D.C.
Nice to see you, Paul.
The crime in Washington, D.C., I was reading a couple of stories on that one. It's just getting out of control also. Do you have the homelessness there that you have in San Francisco?
Well, not to the extent of San Francisco. You have some tents around some of the major parks and the circles and things like that. But it's been fairly static. I haven't noticed much of an uptick lately. It's certainly not like San Francisco. It's more violent crime and things like that we're dealing with, carjackings, that kind of stuff.
Well, with that problem growing over the years, and if you notice this, you cannot deny that where you had Democrat leadership really validating the sanctuary cities as you had more homeless people come in, you had more illegals come in. That's exacerbated this problem. Joe Rogan and I want you to hear this, Joe Rogan had a piece, I was talking to some comedian, I forget who it was, but he's talking about San Francisco. And when I was listening to this, I was thinking, is there any hope at all out there? At all from where we are now in this country?
San Francisco's the worst. San Francisco is like a failed state. San Francisco might as well be Libya. That place is wild.
Yeah.
People are just in the streets.
The crime is next level in San Francisco. It is stupid.
Next level.
It is stupid.
People are parking their cars and leaving their windows rolled down and their hatches open.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to get smashed.
It doesn't matter what time of day, and it doesn't matter who's around.
Doesn't matter who's around. No one's stopping anybody from doing anything.
Mm-mm.
It's crazy.
It's becoming a ghost town, and they're not pumping the brakes on it.
I don't know what they do now at this point. What do they do? They don't have the resources to fix it now. Because they've it up so bad for so long, and they would have to admit that all of their policies sucked.
And nobody's going to do
Nobody's going to do that.
Look, he's absolutely right. How do you control this thing? First of all, you've got to get the border under control, because that's a major feeder in San Francisco and elsewhere as far as homelessness and drugs.
Well, I mean, historically, Paul, when one party goes off the rails, or that they renominate people who are not effective, or somebody's in office and they're accused of corruption, the other party successfully brings a candidate to the fore and changes things, turns things around. We saw that in New York, for example, from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But, like Chicago, Lori Lightfoot ran it into the ground, and what do the voters do there? They voted for somebody just as bad or worse. So, I mean, the big problem has to do with the fact that in these one-party controlled areas now, where you've had the demographic shifts, where a lot of the people who have more conservative instincts have basically left and gone, there's just a machine-style political system that just reinforces what are essentially failed policies. And now we're seeing that nationally with, by every historical account, the Democrats should have had their clock cleaned in the last election, based on even just the border situation that Biden had intentionally created and sabotaged. But instead, they barely lost the House. They feel emboldened. I think Biden feels he wouldn't be running for re-election if he didn't think the fix was in, right? Because he's not going out there campaigning, is he? And so they feel like they've got a lock. And if they can find a way to adjust even 5 million of these illegal aliens, get them into the voting booth, they can establish one-party control. It's only a matter of time. And I just got through reading Victor Davis Hanson's new book, The Dying Citizen, and he basically says, look, the globalist elites who are kind of in control have aligned themselves with these, multinational and globalist agendas who are basically saying they don't care what happens to the interior of the country. And look at New York. Mayor Adams is pleading with Biden to do something about the problem. You've got people demonstrating and even rioting in opposition to what Biden's doing and allowing to happen. What do you see? Well, Wall Street corporations with trillions of dollars of assets writing a letter to Biden saying, we want a federal bailout. The same corporations that for years, Paul, have been obstructing immigration controls and telling us that immigration is an unalloyed benefit to everybody. Well, people, in these states, your high value added taxpayers, your educated elites, they're leaving. And so the only people left are people who just don't know any better.
But Dan, and I mentioned this before, isn't that the formula that they figured out from small towns in Mississippi to Memphis to Jackson to San Francisco, et cetera, et cetera. They figured out if you use these policies, the people who vote Republican or conservatives are going to leave. It's going to hurt you economically. It's going to hurt you physically, crime. It's going to hurt you in a multitude of different ways, which we can attest to by looking at the stats. But you will control power. Every time one of your bad policies are enacted, that magic formula for the Democrats is they are safer in that district. So, I mean, it works. If you can get rid of the people who are going to vote against you and have those who are subservient or depending on subsidies to be there, you don't give a damn how bad it is. You got your money.
Well, that's a corruption of a political system. That's one of the dangers of pure democracy that even the framers, the founders, all understood was that if you engage in redistributionist policies, it becomes a shakedown. So the reason these Democrat politicians don't care if their city goes down the crapper is if they can get their hands on the public treasury and redistribute it to their political allies. That's all they care about. They're not serving a broader public good. I mean, as far as they're concerned, we saw that from Kathy Hochul. Says, you don't like it, you can leave New York City. You can leave New York, right? So, what, they're all going to Florida, right? They're all going, nobody wants DeSantis to run for president. They want him to stay as governor in Florida because they love him so much. And then the governor of Massachusetts, her name is Maura Hindley. She's just called out the National Guard, 250 members of the National Guard. Yeah, what do you hear from the DHS Secretary Mayorkas? Like, let's let more in. And now they want to continue expanding this parole power illegally, Paul, expand this parole power. People don't remember, but in 1993, the first Trade Center bombers came into this country exactly this way, fraudulent asylum claims through the JFK airport. And this is exactly, you vote Democrat and look what happens. It goes on again. Now it's going on completely out of control. Here's some new numbers on this one. I got these just for your interview here. Custom and Border Protection, CBP. There we go. I cannot speak this morning. They flagged 74,904 illegal migrants nationwide for potentially posing risk to the national security. This was between October of last year and August of this year. Almost 75,000 were flagged as a potential risk. Border Patrol agents encountered 25,627 special interest illegal migrants in fiscal year 2022, compared to now the year before during Trump, 3,675. The year after, not 3,600, but 25,627. And some of these people were very, very bad people, and they don't know where they are, Dan. They have no idea. Well, we have a national security problem. We have from China people coming illegally. I'm sure some of them are from the CPB, the Communist Party, and they're here to infiltrate in one way or another military bases and other places and spy. You have ISIS allied people coming in through our southern border. I mean, it's only common sense to realize that international smuggling operations, cartels, terrorist operations, and hostile foreign governments are taking advantage of what the Biden administration is doing on the border. And unfortunately, we're going to be dealing with this for an awful long time because, I mean, the big problem here is if we get 4 more years of Biden, Obama, I mean, I think Obama's calling the shots here. What does it mean for the country? Because, the bad tendencies in the first term are often doubled down, made far worse in the second. So given what he's done already with everything, inflation, stagnation, cost of living, and now immigration and the border, I mean, where does this go from here? So this election, pretty critical stuff, Paul. And when you look at the way he identifies problems, which is kind of bizarre itself, and then not only is he identifying the problem in a skewed way, the solution to that problem is even more bizarre, and I'll explain what I'm talking about when we come back with Dan Stein. Something over the weekend that he said. Hang on, we'll get to that in just a second or two. And again, Dan Stein, president of FAIR, Federation for American Immigration Reform. We'll continue coming up next. Days of Marty
Marty Robbins singing that song. Here's the cut we were talking about from the president in the last few days.
And one of the other things I've been asking the Congress for is need about $15 billion along the border to be able to deal with the technology needed to be able to determine whether or not these precursor drugs are making it into Mexico or into the United States, and dealing with that. So there's more to do there as well.
Dan, he needs $15 billion for the technology just to ascertain if drugs are coming across the border. That's basically what he said. You know anything about that story and that request?
Well, he said the precursors for these drugs, which means the chemicals you use to mix them up. But, Biden spends money like he's a drunken sailor. And part of the reason we're in this fiscal mess is total lack of discipline. But notice he never really talks about controlling the border from a security standpoint. It's either for processing, expedited consideration, and then moving them inside of the country, or in some other way, moving people in as fast as possible. So it's hard to understand. We kind of know that the fentanyl is coming in. We kind of know that Americans are dying. We kind of know where they're coming from, like China and Mexico's manufacturing them. And we know who's doing it. So he just mumbles off this stuff. He's a doddering old senile fool, and he's obviously not running anything, Paul.
Well, it is a little bit disheartening to he uses it like a campaign chest. I'm going to put this out there, and we're going to give you this. We're going to give you, much like the student loan debacle that he also created. But to say, and by the way, the precursors, I'm not sure how much precursors coming in. I mean, they're most of the stuff is a finished product as far as fentanyl is concerned, is my understanding. So why we would need another $15 billion for technology is beyond me.
Well, Paul, he's out there saying how, Trump didn't build anything, right? This thing about the infrastructure. He's saying, I built this infrastructure for 10 years, Well, first of all, Trump was a developer who actually accomplished something in his life. He actually, as a private citizen, was in business, which apparently is a horrible, heinous thing, according to the New York Attorney General. But for most people, it's actually a record of accomplishment. Biden, who's been a lifelong politician and never did anything but serve in the government and scam off the taxpayer, the only reason he got an infrastructure bill through is because Democrats cooperated. But all during Trump's administration, Democrats refused to discuss infrastructure under any conditions. And then Biden turns around and goes, well, Trump didn't get it done, but I'm getting it done, only because Republicans helped him do it. So it's kind of a one-way street. Republicans seem to be willing to help Democrats to get certain things done, but Democrats never help Republicans get anything done, and that's apparently okay. And Biden's happy with this non-unification strategy. When he claims he's going to be a great unifier, all he does is divide the country. And these indictments on Trump are a slap in the face to 70 million Americans who supported Trump. They're outrageous.
It is hard to believe that the guy hasn't even been to the wall or to the border, and I don't think he has he?
No, well, he went near the border. He had a couple of quick briefings for about 15. He has no interest in the border. He told us early on that this stuff was seasonal. It happens every year. It's going to take care of itself. Well, the charts don't lie. It's a hockey stick from when he came in, going straight up. And his policies are directly the reasons. And really the weirdest part of it is politically, it looks like he's hemorrhaging support now, even among blacks and Hispanics. And the New York Times is saying, well, it's going to help Republicans because it's going to hurt Democrat turnout. Well, hey, guess what? The Democrats deserve to lose this next election because Biden is a disaster.
What do you know about the panels that he's selling? We hear that he's selling them pennies on the dollar. Do you have any information as far as fair is concerned on this?
Well, they're contractors who are bidding on the rusting equipment that's laying out there because the Biden administration wants to move it out, and they're selling it at deeply. It's like basically government surplus. And Congress wants to put the stuff to work and make him put it up. I mean, what a squandering waste of taxpayer money. But Biden doesn't care about taxpayer money. He uses it to get elected, and he and Obama are so beholden to these people who have captured the White House that they're not willing to even make the faintest gesture, to even head fake, to convince the American people they're trying to do something about it. even in the face of these practically urban riots in Chicago and New York, and Democrat mayors and others are screaming and hollering, governors declaring states of emergency, calling out the National Guard. And what do we get from Biden? He's out on the beach in Rehoboth. Nothing. He's completely unconcerned about this incredible mess he's created.
There was a story on Friday's broadcast of Fox News, Fox and Friends. Representative Jeff Van Drew, who's a Republican from New Jersey, he reacted to some plans by the Biden administration, who actually said this, that he wanted to send migrants to Egg Harbor Township in New Jersey. Reports pointed out that the plan is to send the migrants to the town of 50,000 people to help alleviate the stress in New York City. New York City has a population of 8.3 million. You put that many people as far as, he didn't say how many he wanted to send there, though. Now, not only was Representative Van Drew, a Republican from New Jersey, upset about the migrants being reloaded to Egg Harbor Township, but also that the Biden administration will create such a security risk by housing migrants at an airport that has both FAA Technical Center and 177th Fighter Wing of the New Jersey Air National Guard. So how many people can slip through there, as you alluded to a little bit earlier? It's crazy.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, Van Drew may be a target because he left the Democratic Party at some point. But Atlantic City and some of these places in New Jersey, they're really not doing that well. They certainly don't have the resources. That's the thing about so much of this illegal immigration, which is what this paroled asylum seeker stuff is. It's illegal. Still, it falls on the state and local taxpayers, Paul. And, you know, Texas brought a lawsuit against the Biden administration to get them to enforce the law. And the Supreme Court said, you know, there's no standing, meaning that Texas couldn't sue because they couldn't show injury. Well, this is the same Supreme Court that in 1982 told Texas that you have to provide free public education to illegal alien children and illegal aliens and their children as well. And so it's like state and local taxpayers are getting clobbered by this process, and yet they have no remedy. I mean, they can't go to court to get the laws enforced. When Biden dumps people in small towns like Egg Harbor County or Atlantic City or any upstate New York, I mean, the people there they have no relief. And then you have these multi-trillion-dollar big companies in New York saying, well, the federal government should give us a bailout. The federal government should give us a bailout. These are the same corporations that were telling us for years that immigration is a big benefit, unalloyed benefit. We need more immigrants. And now they're turning around and saying, well, we, the taxpayers, have to keep picking up the tab for their addiction to cheap labor. So it's just absurd hypocrisy.
I'm not sure how much longer we can do this, where the cities continue to ask for money on a national basis. The debt continues to spiral out of control. It just does not bode well to turn this around. And if anybody comes in, it's one of those situations that you've made such a big mess, honestly, a big mess. Even someone who comes in and does the right things, it's going to take a while to clean this up, even if we started yesterday.
Well, the big problem is that we have these backlogs that go on for years, and the law put in place years ago creates family chain migration. Every time you give green cards to a group of people, a whole mess and more people get in line. So no matter how fast you admit people, the faster they're going to come in and behind them. So you have these backlogs that go on for 25, 30 years. The only way we're going to get immigration under control is if a moratorium is put in place, and we basically cease all but very small essential amounts of immigration for about 40 years to revamp the administrative structure and the law to make it possible to regain control. Right now, the average American citizen cannot even begin to understand how the immigration system works. And it pays to break the law. You're a fool if you actually comply with the letter of the law now because you get a benefit by breaking it. That's not the American way, Paul. Cheaters shouldn't prosper, and they shouldn't be able to jump in the head of the line. It violates fundamental rules of fairness.
Kind of the same way as far as shoplifting is concerned over in San Francisco, where big news over the weekend, there was a major chain people said they're pulling out. They just couldn't take it anymore because there's no consequences for breaking the law. And if you're sitting there, a struggling mom, trying to do the right thing, go to work, put food on the table, if you're a single mom, then you got to look at these guys and say, why the hell am I paying for this? One quick question here, and not a lot of time to answer it. But do you feel the young immigrant who is coming in illegal is not even in the same mindset as one coming across illegal 5 or 10 years ago. It's almost they have this anti-American feel to it from some of the things that we've seen. Your thoughts on that? It's a different type of illegal coming across.
Well, you don't want to overgeneralize, but you have people who are cartel operatives and people who are smuggled in who are formerly cartel members or gang members who are definitely hardened criminals. But then you have families,
and they know how to play, and they know how to play the system. They're understanding how to play the system.